The Victoria Arts Council respectfully acknowledges the Lekwungen-speaking people within whose traditional territory we operate, and the Songhees, Esquimalt, and Wasanic First Nations, whose historical relationship with this land and diverse cultural heritage continue to this day. We raise our hands in gratitude for the ancestors, matriarchs, hereditary leaders, the artists and knowledge keepers, as well as the educators from these lands, and we give thanks for the privilege of working and living here. My name is Kagan McFadden, and I am the Executive Director of the Victoria Arts Council, and it's my honor to work at the Victoria Arts Council with Cass McConkey, Program Coordinator here at the VAC. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Cass.
Great, thank you, Kagan. I'm going to share my screen and share some slides with everyone today. All right, so welcome to Creative Mornings. November's theme is truth. Truth lies at the bottom of a well, winding from its source in the ice pack of distant mountains. Truth tastes pristine, uncompromised by what would be profitable or convenient. Truth causes your body to hum like a tuning fork, resonating at the same frequency as the universe around you. When you experience an undeniable truth, writer and social worker Jessica Dorr observes, you will beg, borrow, and steal. You will rearrange your whole life, forsake everything, just to serve what is real. Our Buenos Aires chapter chose this month's exploration of truth, and Soul Kadi illustrated the theme. Thank you to MailChimp, Creative Mornings' official partner for global marketing. Do the hours just seem to run away from you? Try managing your energy instead of your time with MailChimp & Co.'s energy management tips for agencies and freelancers. You can find more information on the Creative Mornings website. Thank you to the City of Victoria and the CRD for their continued support. And thank you to HCMA. HCMA is an architecture firm that designs buildings, brands, and shared experiences that connect people. We are from the Victoria Arts Council, and we'd like to share our current exhibition, Art of Reconciliation. The Art of Reconciliation project explores how young adults feel about reconciliation and helps them express those feelings through art. And our presenters today are the co-creators of the project, so we will get a little more into the Art of Reconciliation in a second. We are excited to welcome back Little Gems, our annual holiday show and sale. Registration is still open until the 29th. We're looking for original works of art, craft, cards. All VAC members are encouraged to participate in this non-juried opportunity. We will be open daily from the 3rd till the 18th of December. And please join us Saturday, December 3rd at 3 p.m. for our annual general meeting. Our AGM will dovetail with the opening of the Little Gems Members Show, as well as the public unveiling of our commissioned BIPOC billboard. Day Without Art is an international day of action and mourning in response to the AIDS crisis. The VAC recognizes Day Without Art annually through a partnership with Visual AIDS in New York City. This year, we are proud to host the hour-long screening, Being and Belonging at the Parkside Hotel Theater on November 30th at 8 p.m. Admission is free. We hope to see you there. Seating is limited, so please RSVP by phone or email. And more information is on our website and social media about the event. Without further ado, please welcome our speakers today. Debbie Douez is a professional art therapist and artist located in Lekwungen territory and is one of the founders of the Art of Reconciliation project. Debbie has been on her own deep learning journey since first learning about residential school history in 2012 while creating a short film up in Fort Nelson. The shock of learning about such an important part of our shared history so late in life has a significant impact on her career. Since making that short film, Debbie has focused her career almost entirely on decolonizing and reconciliation efforts, from helping to create the reconciliation reporting beat at The Discourse, an online news media organization, to working with the Musqueam Nation to help retell an important aspect of their history, to working directly with Indigenous clients at the Victoria Native Friendship Center as an art therapist. Today, Debbie is focused on helping to facilitate the learning journey of young adults in her community through work through the Art and Reconciliation Project. Tanya Clarmont is an Anishinaabe on her father's side, and her community is Bear Island Reserve in Ontario, a water access only community. She is also French Canadian from the Ottawa Valley on her mother's side. She acknowledges and embraces both sides of her culture and has made efforts to learn both the Anishinaabe and French languages. Tanya moved to BC to further her education while also continuing her career with the Friendship Center movement, which dates back to 2001. She currently works for the Victoria Native Friendship Center as the Director of Management Services. She has held positions at the BC provincial and national level of Friendship Center movement. In her consulting roles, Tanya works with Called to Action Collaborative to deliver customized learning tools and programs related to cultural safety, reconciliation, the TRC calls to action, and Indigenous financial literacy. I'll now pass it over to Debbie and Tanya. Stop my share.
Great, thank you for that introduction, Cass. So I am Debbie Douez, and that's Tanya in orange. And we're here today to talk to you about truth and the art of reconciliation and why we feel truth is such an important and central aspect to our project. So I'm going to start out by just telling you a little bit about what the art of reconciliation is as a project. And then Tanya will tell you a bit about why we started this project. And then we'll talk about the truth element of like what kind of truth and what kind of truth is coming up from the project, and what is our personal truth in the project and why we feel it's such a significant component. And then we'll just tell you a little bit about what we've done so far, what we've been learning, and where we hope the project will go. And then we'll open it up to questions. So what is the art of reconciliation? So as Cass sort of alluded in her intro, the art of reconciliation is an expressive arts program and deep learning experience for Indigenous and non-Indigenous young people. So we bring young people together for a shared learning experience, and that learning is supported with art therapy throughout, because the theme of reconciliation is a difficult one. And whether you are Indigenous or non-Indigenous, we bring different perspectives. And we felt it was very important to have this shared learning experience in a mixed cultural environment for truth sharing, really, from the different perspectives, because how can reconciliation ever happen if we don't come together and have important conversations and learn together and see how each other is learning, because that seems to be a really important component of the project as well. The way the project is structured is we felt that it was very important to start with truth before reconciliation. So we invite community members, Indigenous community members, to come forward and share stories, to share whatever it is that they might like to share. So we work with local nations and visiting nations. We involve the urban Indigenous perspective through the partnership with the Friendship Center, which is how this whole project was kind of created. It was incubated through the Friendship Center, and we'll get Tanya to talk a little bit more about that. We share the local Indigenous perspective, like our local nations, wherever we're operating the program. So in this case, we've worked with the Songhees and Esquimalt Nation. We talk about cultural safety and why that's important. We have lectures on anti-racism. We learn about Métis culture. We learn about residential school history through the film Picking Up the Pieces, which is about the making of the witness blanket by Carrie Newman. And that is something that we spend a bit of time with as well. And after each one of these facilitated workshops, I guess you can call them, we process what we're learning through art therapy sessions, which allows each person to really take the time to take in and process what they're learning, and then reflect back to the group with the art piece that they created. So art therapy is you're basically just using the theme of what you just learned, and you're creating whatever picture or image that occurs to you. And that's a really deep way of processing information. And then all of that is shared with each other in sort of group art therapy sessions. And from that, we learn about the perspectives of each other and what each other's truth is as we absorb that information. And we do that over the course of a month. And then after that base foundational teaching is completed, we then prepare for a final art piece that will be created to share with the general public. And so the second month of the program is all about learning about art materials, because you don't have to be an artist to be part of the Art of Reconciliation. We're there to support you and figure out what materials you could use, which different forms of expression you could use. We mostly do 2D and 3D artworks because they're easier to hang in gallery spaces and whatnot. But that's time for everyone to kind of explore what they might like to create. And they become quite intentional about what it is that they want to share with the general public, which is very different art making than the therapeutic art making that we were doing. And so at that point, the project becomes a public project, and it is on display, as Cass mentioned, at the moment at Victoria Arts Council. So you can go and see that now. And I think we'll provide a link to an Until magazine issue as well, which profiles the artwork and the artist statements. So participants write a pretty meaningful artist statement about their work that accompanies their work. And this is where the general public then interacts with the project. So that's essentially the structure. So we have cohorts of groups come through. We have public exhibitions, and we welcome new participants as we grow the project. As we have more and more cohorts, the exhibition gets larger and larger, and we hope to move the exhibition around. So that gives you a sense of the framework of the Art of Reconciliation. So I'll pass it over to Tanya to explain why we wanted to do this project.
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, the Friendship Center has been on a journey exploring reconciliation since 2018, which is when I started working at the Friendship Center. And through that work, we've created a network called the Victoria Urban Reconciliation Dialogue. And we spent 3 years listening to the community, hosting events and listening to the community about what this community specific to our area needs to progress in reconciliation. And at the end of 3 years of listening, we wrote a blueprint that centralized 4 main themes that we heard in resounding efforts from everybody. And one of those was education. The other ones are relationship, physical spaces, and decolonization. But in terms of education, everybody was saying the same thing that Debbie alluded to, that you can't get to reconciliation without first knowing and accepting the truth of the history of colonization. And, for me, I always say, and balancing that with learning the joys of culture and music and expression and art. So that's sort of how we came into this space. I had met Debbie through a practicum she had been doing at the Friendship Center, and we just really got along, and we were like, we really want to do work together. What are some of the things we're interested in? And reconciliation was at the top of both of our lists. And of course, art is really prevalent in Indigenous communities and, interwoven into, all our ways of being and life in general. And so it always makes sense for us to include art in the work that we do with community and through the Friendship Center. And so we started exploring what that looked like, and we went to community again to hear more specific to this work that we were looking to do. While that was all happening, I was sort of building a team out of other ways to engage the community. And so the VNFC has a public lending library. It's the largest collection of Indigenous resources on Vancouver Island, and anybody can have membership at the library. And really trying to cultivate spaces where people can learn in a shared environment, Indigenous and non-Indigenous people together, because reconciliation is a shared journey, and it's for everybody to participate in. And so that's sort of how we got to this space of wanting to include Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in the space. We wanted it to be experiential as a learning environment. We wanted to have a lot of perspectives included, and that's why we have guest lectures and people come in and share their perspective on an aspect of one of the topics. And we also thought it was important to sort of create a peer group. Ensuring the cultural safety of everybody in the space during these learning experiences is really important, and helping them feel comfortable and supported with each other and as a group is also really important, because we want them to be personal and we want them to bring their emotional self into the space. And so we thought if we started with a peer base and, by grouping a little bit by age, and then also focusing on the young people, because a lot of them are going to benefit from the updates in curriculum that our littler ones are starting to benefit from, and understanding the history in Canada. But also they're going to go into the world and be leaders, and some of them are already leaders. So we wanted to dedicate a space to that group so that they could have the same opportunity of learning. And so through all those things and our journey with the reconciliation dialogue, our desire to engage non-Indigenous community into the Friendship Center, and always seeing art as a strong basis for learning, we had sort of envisioned this Art of Reconciliation project. And in my introduction, Cass said I was the Director of Management Services, but actually we renamed our team this summer. We're actually Community Action and Learning now, because that's how we see our engagement out in the community. We're trying to bring people through education into active, activity in reconciliation. And so we're really proud of the whole complement of programs that we're now offering, and to have the Art of Reconciliation as one of those has been a really strong avenue for those young people to come in and start accessing the Friendship Center.
Yeah, thank you, Tanya. Just picking up on what Tanya was saying, we have been focusing up until now on the age group of 18 to 29, because as Tanya mentioned, that is a group that typically wasn't taught about colonialization and residential school history in school yet. And we're certainly finding that with the cohorts that we've run so far. They may have had a course here and there, but they certainly haven't been exposed to, Indigenous values and culture and all the richness that is there, and quite rewarding to learn about. And even those that are Indigenous are learning because they've been cut off. Many have been cut off from culture. So it's a powerful learning journey for a lot of people. And that's all about kind of getting to truth, which is sort of what we want to talk a little bit more about now, is the truth aspect to the program. And I think when it comes to truth, and as I started reflecting on truth before giving this presentation, I realized that truth is so much bigger than me and my perspective. Like, there is your own personal truth, and there are the things that you think but the more and more that I thought about truth, especially as it relates to reconciliation, the more I realized that it is something that evolves and changes over time. And I think as a settler, speaking to other settlers, I think it's really important for all of us to know that we can never truly understand the truth of the experience of Indigenous peoples because we haven't lived that experience. And part of what Tanya's and the Friendship Center are trying to get at is having, and this program are trying to have more moments when we can be together so that we can at least see someone else's truth, which leads to greater understanding. I can think of several moments in my own personal learning journey where I have stuck my foot in my mouth because of my own ignorance, because I thought I knew the truth, but I did not know the truth. And so I think we need to approach the truth with a great deal of humility and realization that it is a learning journey for us all to come closer and closer to the truth. Did you want to say anything on that from that perspective, Tanya, about truth and why it's so important from an Indigenous perspective?
Yeah, you know, when people ask me, I get asked a lot, what can I do to support reconciliation, or how can I support reconciliation? And my first answer is that you have to know and accept the tragic history of colonization and Indigenous peoples in Canada. So it's one thing to learn it, but some people have a hard time processing it and having it really resonate within them as true, as the truth. And we really need that to be the first step. We need people to be personally touched by their learning journey so that they can have that deep impact and really, you know, accept, you know, while their experience may have, as Debbie said, been something that they reflect positively on here in Canada, and many do, there's a whole other reality that exists. And, you know, before when I would teach reconciliation, I would say, well, you don't know what you don't know, right? And there's a lot of forgiveness in that space, but ever since last May and with the babies being found, you can't not know anymore. And I don't think that as a country, we can take that step back. We all know now. We know that there's a really serious, deep history that is a challenging reality for people to grasp and to come to terms with. And we need, you know, we need people to be willing to take those hard journeys and sit in awkward spaces and put their foot in their mouth and be willing to make those mistakes. And I'm Anishinaabe, I'm from Ontario. I'm not from a local territory. I'm not even from BC. And so I was a learner when I came here 17 years ago, and I had to relearn the history of this place with these people and the stories that make their truths here, which is a different experience than mine. My community has, you know, more than 200 more years of colonization than the communities here. And so I have, you know, our people's experience is different. And I think that's one of the things that I also really focus on when we do this work, is helping people understand the diversity that exists in Indigenous peoples. As you know, as nations, languages, culture, music, regalia, everything, so that they can, you know, get to what Debbie said, like we need to hear these individual stories and experiences because they're all unique, but they're all really valid and deserve a space to be told and shared. So yeah, the truth aspect of that, it could be hard for the people that have to share those truths. And a lot of people spend a lifetime working and doing healing work so that they can share their story. And so we have to be, you know, really cognizant of the few resources that we have right now in community of people that are healthy enough to do that work without harming themselves. And so then while, you know, Canadians and Canada is learning this truth, we still have to support our Indigenous communities to be doing those healing journeys themselves so that more people can step into the space and support the conversation.
Yeah. Well said, Tanya. We also felt that if we were going to create a project that had a final exhibition in the theme of reconciliation that would have an impact on the public sphere, we had to make sure that all of our participants were grounded in a similar truth before working in that theme, because that's a potentially dangerous way to express yourself. If you express yourself from an ill-informed place, you could be putting more misinformation out into the public. So we felt that the truth component, this first month of deep learning, shared experience of this program, was really critical and fundamental to the program. And yes, some of it, well, a lot of it is hard, and watching each other respond to those truths is hard, which is why it was so important to us to wrap the entire program with mental health supports. So for the duration of the program, all participants have 24 access to an art therapist. So we provide that therapeutic support. The art therapy itself supports people as they can process, and then the group circle. The whole program is kind of held together by the circle, and we do circle sharing, and Tanya teaches how to like what the purpose of a circle is in Indigenous culture, and how you do circle sharing appropriately. And there's so many rich things that come from the teachings from Indigenous peoples, you know, how to listen really well, how to introduce yourself, and all of these things. So there's many rich and beautiful things that people are learning in this program. We're connecting directly with Indigenous peoples, and learning their true stories as well, which is, there's a very fulfilling component, but we keep safety and safe space in mind at all times. And we feel like art is such an accessible way to deal with complicated and difficult themes. And it seems to be a pretty beautiful experience for most people that go through the program. So we want to kind of wrap up our presentation by telling you a little bit about what we've accomplished so far, what we're learning. One of our important partners in this project is the University of Victoria, who has been helping us document the experiences and the outcome of this project on individuals. So we're starting to learn a little bit about what people are experiencing and what the outcomes are. And just anecdotally, we're noticing just by what people volunteer to us at the end of the program, how much more confident they feel about talking about reconciliation themes. And this is something that we've identified as a real barrier to reconciliation, is this fear that people have of saying the wrong thing, or sticking your foot in your mouth, or not being well enough informed, whether you're Indigenous or non-Indigenous. And but that confidence piece is critical, so that from this program, people can go and talk to their friends and talk to their families and engage in conversations with a feeling of confidence that they feel much more informed to be able to have those conversations. And that's no minor outcome to me. That to me is pretty fundamental. If we are to advance reconciliation in our country, we have to be able to talk about it in respectful ways, in culturally sensitive ways, in an anti-racist way as well. So I would say that's one of the outcomes. Did you want to jump in and talk about other things that we're learning that are important, Tanya?
Yeah, I would say two things that we're seeing or noticing right away. One is that they come back to the Friendship Center looking for another engagement opportunity. And that's why I think I was saying it's so important to have a complement of opportunities to offer someone. Even something as simple as, you know, being part of a book club, or we accept book reviews for things you've read from our library, and engaging them that way. We have a volunteer program, we have the community learning program. And so I think that has been really successful in terms of laddering people into action. And then the other thing that I think has been a really important learning for me and for the VNFC, for the Friendship Center in particular, is that you know, when we thought about creating this shared learning environment for Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, and we knew that safety was the biggest component that we had to ensure for all the participants, I think what we didn't realize was how many people would come into the space who have Indigenous ancestry, but don't understand their indigeneity, or don't have access to any deep connection or understanding of what that is. And when you think of like the pretendians that are coming up in the news right now, that just further challenges those people to not want to say they're Indigenous because they don't feel entitled to say they are Indigenous. So this space, they don't have to identify in any way to access this space. And we've seen participants come in and not identify as Indigenous for several weeks sometimes, because they're building their knowledge and understanding. And when they finally get to that point where they feel comfortable enough to say, you know, I am entitled to say this, even though I have maybe a lack of connection to a community or an understanding of my own culture, because, you know, that is colonization in action. That's assimilation working. And so for us to, we need to lift those people up, and we need to center those voices and get them into action as well for themselves and for reconciliation for our community. And so I think I didn't realize how many of those people were looking for a space to come and explore indigeneity and to learn and to have access to knowledge. And so that's been a really positive outcome. It's really opened our eyes to the way we invite people into spaces and how we create safety for that population that isn't yet self-identifying as Indigenous, but is, you know, does have those connections in their family's history. So, and we've applied that learning already to other programs that we deliver.
Yeah, that was a really powerful learning for us. And I think the other thing that I think about when it comes to this project and why it's having an impact is because people are learning about what reconciliation means to them at a very personal level, which I think before you go through a program like this, where you go on a shared learning journey, you kind of have this idea of reconciliation as something that's out there, and it has to do with, you know, the government and groups of people, and like, what do I have to reconcile? It didn't involve me, or, you know, like there's like, it's a concept that's external to you as a settler, speaking from a settler perspective. And what this project does is cause people to really internalize the idea of reconciliation as it relates to colonization and Indigenous peoples, and get a deeper understanding of what reconciliation means to you personally. And that's what I think the art therapy sessions help to start bring out in people, is realizing, okay, how does this information impact me? What can I do? And what we're noticing as well is that it's impacting what these young participants will do later, or how they will incorporate reconciliation efforts into their work lives afterwards, which I think is like another very powerful outcome. And so from a truth perspective, I think we all need to find a way to do that deep personal reflecting, and as in whatever way you can, through whatever programming you might have access to, through whatever books you might have access to. I think if the more, again, from a settler's perspective, that you can expose yourself to Indigenous teachings and worldviews and values, which are highly aspirational views and values, in my opinion. They make me a better person by learning about it, and I think they would make all of us a better person to learn more about it. I just encourage everyone to go on that journey and find your own truth as it relates to reconciliation. So I think at that pretty much wraps it up, unless, did you want to say any other final words, Tanya, before we open it up to questions?
No, I think I covered everything I wanted to share.
Okay. All right. So I guess we'll throw it over to the Arts Council to facilitate some questions, if anyone has any questions.
Thank you so much, Tanya and Debbie. It's really appreciated just learning the background of the project, and it's been going on for a couple of years now. So there's so much to talk about, and I know this is a real fast overview. So I really encourage everyone to go to the Art Reconciliation website. There's so much more information and ways to contact these speakers and these professionals. I'm reminded very briefly of our last Creative Morning, which was with Linnea Jericho, advocate, orator, storyteller. And we're working on a book with Linnea through the Arts Council. And after I had offered my land acknowledgement, Linnea augmented it by saying that we want to also acknowledge the earth and the mother. And Cass and I have spent a lot of time with the Art of Reconciliation show here in the gallery. And one thing that really resonated with she and I, and Cass is actually a gardener when she's not working in a gallery, but is the reality of colonization through ecosystems, and how we can talk about native ecosystems as well as invasive and introduced species. I don't want to use the word metaphor, but it's reality, right? And it was such sensitive and smart and really well done artwork about this topic. And so I was really curious about who maybe the speakers were that introduced this line of inquiry, what those workshops looked like, were people out on the land? Who wants to address that idea?
I think we both can.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Tanya.
So while getting on the land would be ideal, we were in COVID when we first started hosting this, and so we were in the virtual land, and so it became challenging to do that. And so the components of that interconnectedness are really like foundational to all Indigenous peoples of Canada. That we, the people, the nature, everything around us is interconnected. And so I think right from the beginning, like when we set up Circle the first night and we talk about why we sit in Circle and the unity that's created there and the commitment to each other by being present in the circle with others. And then it just builds from that. When we talk about, cultural safety, we talk about interconnectedness and relation. And we talk about when the Lekwungen peoples come and speak, they talk a lot about their connection to the territory and the land and how their cultural selves are so intertwined with that. And so I think it's a long-term approach to building that sense of connection. And it's interesting, right? Because you're right, we don't have a workshop that's like, Indigenous people's connection to territory and land and it's, as a subject, but because it's woven through the conversations. We talk about residential schools and people experience that disconnect because they're detached from the spaces that are familiar and where their people have lived since the beginning of time and the impacts of trauma that creates. It really is something that is a strong theme which is reflected through the art that gets created.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to answer your question around who are some of our facilitators. So we have two representatives from Songhees. We have Diane Sam and Florence Dick, and Diane Sam spoke a lot about very specific locations in Victoria that have significance to the Lekwungen people. She actually encouraged participants to use material from the land in their artwork to sort of honor that deep connection to land for Indigenous peoples. They talk about the kama plant and the importance of that, the bulb of the kama as a very important food source and trade good for the Lekwungen people traditionally. And so you'll notice some of the artwork involves the kama, like you'll see the kamas in a few of the art pieces, I think, because they were so influenced by that. Carrie Newman is a facilitator, and one of the people on his team, Rosie, what's Rosie's last name? Tanya?
Hartman.
Yeah, Rosie Hartman is soon to join as a facilitator in his place because he's so busy. But Carrie Newman speaks about the making of the witness blanket, which is this massive art installation that is made up of artifacts or articles found at residential schools that are created into this large, beautiful art piece. So we use it both as an inspiration of how you can turn something very tragic and traumatic into an art piece, but also how he was honoring his father and the stories he told about his father who attended residential schools. We have, I'm trying to remember some of the other programs. We have Angelique Boulasan, who comes in to teach about anti-racism and how to be an anti-racist, because this is an important part of our education too, is realizing how even microaggressions that we think are nothing, we as in, I speak from settler perspective always here, we think mean nothing, actually have like a cumulative impact on racialized communities. So it's all of these things are very deeply processed with all the participants. So that's why you'll see some of these themes coming out, but land is definitely an important one. And I can think exactly of the art piece that you're talking about of the original native plants and then all the invasive species that came in with the European settlers and how they would like to get back to the indigenous ecosystem again. So I hope that answered your question, Keegan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Debbie and Tanya. That's great. Do we have any other questions from our guests, our visitors? Got some new faces today. That's nice to see. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, our friend Graham here. And I know, Debbie, I have met you at the Friendship Center
yes.
and other places as well. Yeah. And so part of the perspective that I'm carrying, and it's great to hear more about this. I was far too unaware of this program going on. However, some of you may be aware of the gift that Marion Cumming has left to the Friendship Center of her property in South Oak Bay. And I'm her executor. So I'm very, it's wonderful to see what's going on at the Friendship Center in this regard. And I know that she would have been or was very pleased in this particular program, because it was really what she was an artist herself, and an artist activist who used her art, her considerable talent for art, in her caring about indigenous issues, environmental issues, and heritage issues as well. All three of those. Oh, this is a painting Marion did, titled inspired by the mother tree, which we used at her memorial recently. And so it's natural for me to think how, and I'm just thinking out loud, and it's up to the Friendship Center to, of course, to determine how her property is used. But it seems that in terms of what her intentions were around, art circles, book circles, both of which she was inspired to do, how some of this perhaps might take place there. I'm just thinking aloud. So, but it's great to hear more about this today. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, and we're going to go and see the show this weekend. So
how do we get in touch with this project?
So actually, to pick up on the comment from the background.
Yeah, that's Willie over there. For some reason, technical reason, she couldn't get into the room. So
I've tried
here she is
to get on, and it won't let me in. It says join meeting in progress, and then it won't go on. It won't go
Okay, well, you're
the
here now.
challenges.
Most
So
important
I'm
thing.
watching behind him here.
Yeah, one of the things that we've been spending a lot of time talking about is opening up the art of reconciliation to other age groups and making it a lot more open for people to participate in. So I think in the next phase of development of this project, we want to pilot that idea and see what having a larger range of our age groups would be like, and not just focusing on the 18 to 29 age group, but to really open it up to anyone in the community who might like to participate, as long as we have that main criteria of it being 50% Indigenous, 50% non-Indigenous, because those conversations are critical to the structure and framework of the project. So hopefully we will have more to share with you about that soon, but in the short term, you can read up about the Art of Reconciliation program and what are all of the programs and who facilitates what, all on the Art of Reconciliation website, which I think we've posted or we will be posting along with the video.
Yeah, that's great.
So you can learn more about it there.
And in the last months of Marion's life, she died August the 1st. She had a Sunday afternoon art circle, and three other participants, thinking of what you're saying about age groups, is that there's these three lovely young girls all around the age of 11, 12, three friends, one from Iran, one from Mexico, one from Ukraine, who Marion was teaching art and also about reconciliation. So
yeah, well, we did it
anyway,
for
thank you.
3 or 4 years before it ended.
It's okay.
Because of the house.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Marion wanted it to continue.
That's great. Thank you so much for invoking Marianne's memory and her legacy, and what an enormous gift that the whole city was talking about. So it's nice to see you here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have about 5 minutes left. If there's no other questions, I wanted to bring back to how how you introduced yourself as coming to reconciliation through film and your video art. And I was just curious right away of if you envision a future iteration of the project where it's exclusively young people working with film and video.
You know, I hadn't thought about that, but it would be a really interesting component to include in the program. Right now, we are somewhat restricted in the type of spaces that we're exhibiting in. And although we have the great honor of being at the Arts Council, who does have the ability to show film in many of the spaces we go into, like we were at the legislature a couple of months ago, and we were up at UVic, and we were at other sort of small places. And we tend to go to unusual spaces as well as, you know, gallery spaces, and not all of those spaces have the capabilities to show film, which is why we've tended to focus mainly on 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional works. But that's not to say that we couldn't have an online component to the program if film is an interest area of the participant. We like to leave it to the participants to decide how they might like to express themselves. And that's really just contingent on the capabilities of the websites we're using. But I think if someone felt really passionate about it, that's certainly something that we could help mentor in them as well. And I would certainly love to see, and you know, a video art kind of approach to this as well. I think it'd be wonderful.
I'm no expert, but you know, I can see the TikTok of reconciliation. You know? It's happening. Great. Well, thank you so much, Tanya and Debbie. It's been a real honor to host the Art of Reconciliation. And, you know, here at the Victoria Arts Council, we have sort of 3 or 4 main nodes to our program. And working with Debbie, we've been able to synergize each of those programs where we have the exhibition, we have this talk right now, and as we've mentioned, the Until Magazine issue, which is linked in the chat. So I think in the future, we'll probably try to do more and more of this where we, especially with such a rich topic, where we can expand it in various ways and welcome new voices and make sure that everyone kind of is able to contribute in different ways. So we really appreciate both of you taking time out of your day this morning to address the project as it is, and everything that you've done towards this conversation and this journey for so many people. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yes, it's been a really nice sharing. And you know, for me, I love talking about the Friendship Center and the programs that we offer, and particularly when the opportunity is open to everybody in community. So I'm really interested in exploring the expanded version of the Art of Reconciliation, and, you know, opening the door to more people, because there's just so many people that want to get engaged. And I think that's amazing.
That's great. Yes. Okay. Well, we'll see everyone next month. We're going to be a little early next month. It's going to be on Friday, December 16th, just because of all the holidays at the end of the month. So
tell them I couldn't find them on Eventbrite, and
Great. We'll sort that out.
I need
Okay,
to
yeah.
be able to, I couldn't find them.
Thanks so much.
we're not on Eventbrite, but we are on CreativeMornings.com. So.
I'll get with you connected. It's okay. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Right.
Bye.